Welcome to the We Watch This Movie podcast, where we sit down and dissect the latest and greatest in movies. I'm Dan, joined by the man with over 2,100 films on his watch list, Jackson. How you doing today?
Fantastic, Dan. Never been better.
Guys, we thought we'd go back to one of Nolan's underrated classics, in my opinion, The Prestige. Now, we put a poll up, and this is the overwhelming choice by a lot of you guys, so we're going to dissect this movie for the next hour or so. Please join us. Hope you're staying safe with COVID-19 going on, staying indoors, and keep listening. Jackson, you been all right?
I've been fantastic. We're going all the way back here to 2006, when the COVID-19 virus was but a glint in the milkman's eye.
You know, you said the word fantastic. Now, Jackson, a lot of people that watch the Jojo Rabbit podcast, I was listening back, I said fantastic about 20 times. I'm banned from using the word again, Jackson.
Are we banning me too?
We're banning you too, but I was a culprit. There was one every 5 minutes. It was bad.
In that case, Dan, I'm amazing.
Listen back and you'll really notice it now that I've told you. Anyway, hope you're all staying safe. We want to thank our sponsor for today's episode as well, Displate, but we'll talk a little bit about them later. Jackson, tell us a little bit about The Prestige.
A real magician tries to invent something new. God. It's something that other magicians will scratch their heads over.
I suppose you have such a trick.
Actually, I do. It's the one they're gonna remember me for.
What happened?
It was the greatest magic trick I've ever seen.
Set against the backdrop of turn-of-the-century London, The Prestige is a mysterious story of two magicians whose intense rivalry leads them on a lifelong battle for supremacy full of obsession, deceit, and jealousy, with dangerous and deadly consequences. From the time that they first meet as young magicians on the rise, Robert Angier and Alfred Bourdin were competitors. However, their friendly competition evolves into a bitter feud, making them fierce enemies for life and consequently jeopardizing the lives of everyone around them. Dan, let's get right into it. The Prestige.
Jackson,
We've got our own little feud going on about this movie.
Jackson, hold on.
Whoa!
I've got my own
Hold up.
synopsis. My own synopsis.
Oh, this is a first. This is episode 7, and he's got his first synopsis. You hear that, everyone? Dan has some notes.
Ready? It's not a long one, but it's something. Here we go. Batman and Wolverine become magicians and date Black Widow. The end. Thoughts?
I can't hear much of an applause, but I'll pay it. It was quite clever.
All right, Jackson, The Prestige. I thought it was a masterpiece. I'm going to get straight out the bat. I thought it was a
High
masterpiece.
praise.
Okay,
High
no.
praise.
I'm sorry. This is an incredible film. Two men devoted to the illusion, to being a magician. They're obsessed with it. And it's a gripping, intriguing sort of period piece. Nolan shines as a brilliant director here at the helm. He'd only done 4 films. This was his 5th film at the time, and I don't know if he was as big as he is now, but boy, he put on a film here. This still holds up. It's one of his most underrated films looking back. Most people think of him for the Dark Knight trilogy, obviously Inception, Interstellar. But this is a masterful exercise in storytelling. This screenplay is incredible. Superb direction, powerful performances. Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Scarlett Johansson, Michael Caine, Andy Serkis, the all-star cast, David Bowie. Brilliant performance. He is the magician of this movie, Nolan. He weaves us through this narrative, jumping through different timelines. Without even batting an eyelid, we go from different timelines. And it's just the showcase of these two leading magicians battling it out, and it is one of the most rewatchable films of all time. It's a masterpiece. Jackson, I love it. Your thoughts?
It's not Memento.
After all that, come on, mate. You know what? Yeah, you're actually not wrong in that. A lot of people think
I'm not wrong. It's definitely not Memento.
Well, a lot of people think Memento is his greatest film. I think Memento's not even in his top 5, but we can go on about that a little bit later. What did you think of this movie, Jackson? In all honesty, you enjoyed it, but how much did you enjoy it?
Nolan really is the magician, pulling the curtain over his tricks. I enjoyed my experience. This is my first time watching
Wow.
The Prestige.
I wish I
Which-
could go back.
It sounds like this is your 8th or 9th, 10th, 11th.
Nah, 7th.
Take me through it. 7th. Wow. Nolan really has a knack and a talent for very poetic storytelling, and his films often do have a real cyclical nature. This, like some of his other work, though, his reach doesn't quite match up with his grasp. He wants to throw lots of grand themes at us, and unfortunately, without a really clear focus, this isn't his best piece of work. I still enjoyed it. I thought this is a good film. You said it. Great performances around the block. But he'll evolve and become an even better filmmaker with his later stuff.
He will, but what didn't resonate about this film for you?
What was the point? What were we watching unfold? There's some great lines here, particularly from Michael Caine's Cutter, about wanting to peel back and unravel the magic behind some of these tricks and how they're done. But why? Why do we need to know? What is Nolan trying to tell us? Sure, it's an enjoyable experience, but what is it?
He's the magician and we're watching his magic trick. That is the movie. We're seeing the 3 acts unfold like a magic trick. You got the pledge, the turn, and the prestige, which is the movie. And it's pretty much showcasing, I think the lead of this film is Christian Bale's Fallon, showcasing how he battles against Angier. And it's just the battle of these two characters and how much this obsession can cause chaos. Is
it a movie about obsession, or is it a movie about movies, about movie magic? What is it about?
It's a bit of
for
both.
me, that's where it's missing.
It's a bit of both. I know you touched off here that you weren't as emotionally connected to this as some of other Nolan's other films. Is that something that was really lacking for you, that emotional connection, or is that what was really missing, or was it just the whole point of the movie? I mean, I'm struggling to come to grips here with why it didn't come together for you.
It was missing a bit of an emotional core. There's some overly sentimental and melodramatic sequences here where we have the loss of a character or two. We're not going to go into spoilers here, of course, but we lose a character or two along the way, and things should have some gravitas to it that it doesn't quite land, and we kind of move on from some things quite quickly. I guess it is about this feud between the two characters, but
That wasn't enough for you?
it wasn't quite enough. It was too unfocused. Nolan's trying to say too much in this movie.
He is trying to say a lot. I think he says it upon a second or third watching. You really come to grips and you really understand what he was trying to put out in this film. I think you really need to watch it again, Jackson. But it's a good, fresh perspective for me watching it 7 times and you watching it only the once. We can see the different opinions. But this is a very rewatchable film and you pick up on things you may have missed. There's so much dialogue that foreshadows other things, even from the opening scene. There's things that foreshadow what we're going to see in the future. It's just an incredible screenplay. Is that something you noticed, the screenplay? Did you notice how good it was? Did you think it was that good?
It was a good screenplay. It wasn't great. It was adapted from a book, Christopher Priest novel known as The Prestige, which was published about 10 years prior and had actually fallen on the lap of Sam Mendes, who was almost attached to direct not long after American Beauty dropped and made him a superstar.
He was attached to The Prestige.
He was attached to The Prestige. That's
Wow.
right. He was due to direct that, so would have been a very interesting film there. But after Nolan's first ever feature, the independent flick Following, came out, well, Christopher Priest decided to give the project to him. So if we consider that how the film plays out, often what we see on screen is actually diary entries or journals from either of the two leads, our antagonist or protagonist, depending on which perspective you want to look at them from. The film plays out from there. It jumps around a lot with the timelines, and it becomes quite complicated and almost difficult to follow. us being cinephiles, I guess we're kind of accustomed to some of these non-linear storytelling, and it'd be interesting to find out what the public thought about this. It's good. It's not amazing.
Well, Jackson, you say, what do the public think? You head over to IMDb. Not as good as Letterboxd. We still love Letterboxd, but IMDb, we got 1 million ratings, which is unheard of. That is a lot of ratings for IMDb. That's heavy, and it's at an 8.5, Jackson, with 1 million ratings. That's unheard of. That's
massive.
In the top 50. It's 46 in the top 50 of all time movies, up there with The Dark Knight, Shawshank Redemption, Godfather. So it's in some strong company up there in the top 50. So a lot of people appreciated this film. Maybe not so much when it first came out. Critics didn't love it. They thought it was good. I think you mentioned it was a 70 Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. It was just good but not great. I think this was it becomes more and more appreciated as the years go on, and it's going to be a classic. If it isn't already, it's going to be an absolute classic in 20 or 30 years from now that people are going to look back on and say, wow, it's one of the best movies with a twist as well. With the big twist, we'll go into in a second. That stands above a lot of those sort of tropey films as well. You mentioned as well the antagonist and protagonist. That was really interesting dynamic in the film where it starts off as Angier's the protagonist and Christian Bale's character Fallon is the antagonist, and then it sort of switches throughout the film. Did you notice that?
Yeah, because we are often listening to different diary entries and journal entries from the two men, the perspective will shift. So sometimes we're seeing things play out from Borden, that's Christian Bale, and sometimes we'll see things play out from Angier, Hugh Jackman. So it can get quite complex, and part of that is where it frustrates me a little with that focus having been lost. It doesn't quite stick to one clear character. We as the audience, we're often a step ahead of either man, and Christopher Nolan as the magician seems to just kind of loom over everything. He's got all the tricks up his sleeve, and it's up to him as they play out. Look, we're speaking a lot here about the reveals and what happens later on. Let's get into it.
Let's get into spoilers, guys. Spoiler alert. You touched on the different timelines and perspectives. So you did get lost within this story and narrative because he does do a lot of what directors don't usually do, where he cuts to different timelines without you even really noticing. Nothing changes on screen. There's no filters. There's no white fade out. It's just straight back to different spots. Was that jarring for you?
It was jarring. We could still follow along, and it took some patience. Despite coming in at about 130 minutes, the pacing, like many of Nolan's work, doesn't have a great deal of momentum to it. Sometimes it can feel like a bit of a slog, but just appreciate it for what it is. Stick with it, and you will understand. I find it interesting that you bring up filters as well. Let's consider another one of his non-linear films like Memento, where we've got things that are played backwards, things played forward, and we can follow along if it's black and white, if it's sepia. And here, being in turn of the century London, everything seems very drab and very blue, and there are some points that seem naturally lit and warmly lit. So yeah, you've just got to have your thinking cap on. I do appreciate it, though.
I have to disagree with you, Jax, about the momentum side of things. I think it builds and builds this film. I think it may have a slow start in a sense, but even then, I was always intrigued. There was, as you go through the film, each character gets revenge on other characters, and they're almost little twists along the way. So many different plot elements to keep us going until eventually we see the twist, and they're always alluding to that twist the whole way. You're always wanting to know. We're getting more and more information about it, but it's in front of our eyes, but we just don't know it. Do you think it was too on the nose because the reveal and him being the brother? Is that something that you saw coming?
Yes, absolutely. In earlier scenes, you will pick up on Christian Bale playing both Borden and Fallon. In a nod to the novel, Borden's first name in that is actually Arthur, and his brother's name is Frederick. Combined Arthur and Frederick, and we get Alfred. So it's interesting here that Christian Bale's first name then becomes Alfred, kind of an amalgamation of the two.
That's cool.
So we do see some of this coming in how it's set up, but like many of Nolan's work, it's often not about the destination; it's about the journey, and it's about how we get there. So I did enjoy that aspect.
With the opening scene, Jackson, I don't know if you caught on this, but we see the hats lying on the ground, multitude of hats, magicians' hats on the ground, and then the title appears, the Prestige. We as an audience member don't know that's actually the Prestige of the film. And it's stuff like this upon a rewatch that you just appreciate more and more. And seeing that you've only seen it once, you probably missed some things like that. And that's not to say that, you have to rewatch every film, but this one in particular, I feel like is a fantastic rewatch.
Maybe, but I mean, what's the point other than giving some audience members it's kind of like he's kind of just scratching us on the head and saying, "Oh, look, now you get it on a second rewatch. Or aren't you so smart? Aren't you so clever?"
Yeah.
I can see why there's a lot of Nolan fanboys out there, but
Well, it makes us think.
Other than being cute,
A lot of films, they don't make us think this much.
Does it make you think though?
I think a lot of films you'll watch and you'll get it and that's it. And it's the same with Inception, where you've got a lot of people had to rewatch to fully understand it. And people, it's only, movies are short. They're 2 to 3 hour experiences. And we want a little bit more sometimes. We want to be tricked. I think Michael Caine's character, Cutter, says somewhere in this film that audience members want to be fooled. And it's true.
You're right, Dan. We do want to, as audience members, we do want to suspend our disbelief for this. And we see that here in the late 1800s, early 1900s audiences that do go see these men's magic shows, despite knowing that there are going to be tricks and that some of it isn't real, or all of it appears to be fake anyway for most of the movie. And I get it, but
yeah. I just want to say as well, Nolan, you haven't seen all these films, have you, just yet?
I think this is the only one I hadn't seen.
Okay, so you've seen all his body of work, Dunkirk, Following, Insomnia.
Okay. Great point. I have not seen Dunkirk.
Okay. Well, I think he is, if it's not apparent already, I think he's one of the best directors going at the moment. This was his 5th film at the time. This sort of established him as a really good director. I think he'd done Memento. I think he'd done Batman Begins. I think that was out before this.
This was not long after Batman Begins. Batman Begins dropped in 2005, and this released in 2006.
He didn't have the acclaim and the prestige, we'll call it, as he does now.
Very cute.
But it's not just about him, Jackson. He's got the dream team behind him. You look at the people involved in this project. Lee Smith, editor. He was involved in a lot of Nolan's work. You're talking Dunkirk. He edited Dunkirk, Inception, Interstellar. He's editing Tenet, coming out hopefully this year. Fingers crossed. Jonathan Nolan, his brother, did the screenplay with him for this. He also wrote Memento, Interstellar, Dark Knight with him as well. Michael Caine, the actor, of course, he's been in how many Nolan films? Who knows?
Oh, almost every Nolan film by this point.
It all blends into one at some point, but he was actually really good in this. David Julian did the score for this, although he would eventually transition into Hans Zimmer. He'd done a lot of work with Nolan as well.
That was a good trade. That was a good draft pick. How we got Hans Zimmer at number 1? I think he has to be happy with that one.
Yeah, and Wally Pfister, cinematography as well. He's went on to do Inception, Dark Knight, Nathan Crowley, production. What I'm saying is he's got the dream team here that he's assembled. This was the first one of the first times they're really gluing it all together. And as you've seen, they're all progressed. It's a team effort. And even Nolan would say that. It's not just him. He's at the helm of this production, but it's a team effort. All the different facets have to blend together. And I think they do in this film. From every facet of editing to production to cinematography, I think it all hits.
All right, if this is a team film, and I'm agreeing with you that this is a good picture, and I believe that Nolan and his team will evolve into better work. if this is a team film, and let's say some of his later work is an A+, where does this sit? For me, it's not at that same level.
For me, this sits at the top 3 at least.
Okay, wow, that's big.
Yeah. And maybe it's, look, I might be biased because Christian Bale, Hugh Jackman, probably 2 of my favorite actors working alive today. And you know what? Christian Bale, I think he is the best actor going right now. A lot of people would say Leo. Honestly, I think he tropes Leo. I've just said it. If you look at his work, okay.
That's big. That's big.
Okay, look, Christian Bale, 4 Academy noms, 5 Golden Globe noms. He's won 1 Academy, he's won 2 Golden Globes. Leo's won 1 Academy, but he's nominated 6 times, and he's been nominated 11 times for a Golden Globe. He's beating him on the awards.
Leo also won for the wrong movie. Let's just put that out there.
He did. Probably one of his, not worst performances, but he's had a lot better, hasn't he? You know, Wolf of Wall Street.
Leo had a much better 2019 with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We would have loved to have seen him take home an Oscar for that, or even flash back to The Departed. That Martin Scorsese flick has a rocking cast with Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen.
I thought he should have won for Wolf of Wall Street, but I think he did go against Matthew McConaughey, who was also astounding. So he got a little bit unlucky there, but I think Christian Bale, honestly, once this is all said and done, he is going to be known as one of the best. Have a look at his body of work, mate. The Fighter, Ford vs. Ferrari.
The Big Short was a massive movie for Christian Bale.
Big Short, American Hustle, The Machinist, The Prestige,
okay,
The Dark Knight
trilogy. His filmography on Wikipedia now.
The Dark Knight trilogy. Come on, what else do you want from the man?
I'm going to agree with you here. Let's consider the actors in this film as the best from their respective fields, and bear with me here. So we've got Christian Bale, who we're claiming is the best movie actor. We've got Hugh Jackman, who might be one of the best musical and stage actors.
Correct.
Let's not forget in 2003, played Peter Allen in The Boy from Oz. So that was a very successful Broadway musical.
And The Greatest Showman. Fantastic.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Andy Serkis. So Andy Serkis, what's he very famous for?
Man, he's got a good body of work. Gollum, Lord of the Rings. He plays
That's right.
Caesar.
So we now have the best motion cap actor. Is Nolan the best director?
Okay.
No, Look, Nolan might be your best director and your favorite director, and the guy, I think he might just be pushing 50 at this point. He's still got another 20 or 30 years ahead of him.
I know.
So this is a very much a dream project, but they're all going to go on and do better work.
Wouldn't you love to see Nolan and Hugh team up again for something?
Yes, what happened? How is this? This is the only time this happened. The guy can bring back Michael Caine for every film. What about Hugh Jackman? Surely.
I don't know how their paths haven't crossed yet. I guess this was a perfect role for Hugh, and then you look at the body of work from Nolan now, and you think Hugh probably can't fit into this mix, but because
come on, if he can find him a spot. If he could put Joseph Gordon-Levitt in The Dark Knight Rises and shoehorn him in, surely he can do the same for Hugh Jackman.
Where was Cillian Murphy in this? He seems to be in a lot of Nolans as well.
Yeah. He would have been busy with what was it? Danny Boyle's Sunshine. Do you remember that?
Yeah. That was good. You know what else? David Bowie put on a phenomenal performance here as Tesla.
He's got to be one of the best rock stars of all time. So
exactly.
There is your absolute murder.
And what about Scarlett Johansson? She's one of the best working actresses. This is a dream cast.
Too bad she had nothing to do. That's got to be a big complaint about this movie. No one's got much to do, mate.
I think she had a fair amount to do. She was a part of the turn. I think you said off air that there's the pledge, the turn, the prestige. She was that key element to take us through that. But touching on David Bowie, although he didn't have much screen time as Tesla, I would have watched a full movie with him as Tesla. A spin-off.
David Bowie could sit there and just look directly into the camera for 90 minutes, and you bet that's getting a 10 out of 10.
R.I.P. the man. That was a really good Tesla performance. I love the line that he has in the film. Have you considered the cost? And then Angier says, price isn't a problem. Name your price. And he's like, no, have you considered the cost? I love that line. That just speaks volumes. And
What was the cost?
well, the cost that he's killing himself every night for the trick, isn't he? He is drowning every night, and his alter self that gets created from this device is the Prestige. Or I think he says he doesn't know if he's going to be the man in the box or the Prestige. So he's taking that risk. There's definitely a cost, Jackson.
I'm going to agree there's a cost, but see, this is another point I'm trying to make. Without a clear focus and a clear exploration of maybe one or two major themes, Nolan gets a little bit lost. I love that idea that yes, there's a cost, and that yes, each time he's duplicating himself with Tesla's machine, that he's maybe giving up a part of him, he's going to be killing off a part of him. But the guy doesn't seem all that troubled by the time we get to the Prestige. When we get to that third act, he still seems to be pretty chippy, if not more maniacal.
In what way?
Well, he concocts this big plan to take down Borden. We say he, of course we mean Angier. Angier poses as Lord Caldlow, having faked his own death on stage and framing Borden. So, okay, great. That's very dramatic, but what's the point of this?
It's dramatic. It's a revenge tale at the core of it, because
it's one-upsmanship. They're competitive.
It is. It's who's the best magician. We're battling it out. And we see that throughout the film, how I think it's Hugh Jackman has this trick with a birdcage, and he's performing it, it's going well, and then eventually Fallon goes on stage.
Is it Fallon?
Well, we don't know at this point.
So it's not even a battle between two magicians. It's a battle between three.
Yeah.
We get that Borden and Fallon, and hey, I'm sure we're going to get right into this. The two of them, I guess technically they can be one, but is it a fight between three people? Is it a fight between two? Does this mean that Borden and Fallon are always going to hold one up on Angier? I suppose, but it's not that clear.
I think it's implied that one of the brothers was more competitive than the other.
Yeah, we believe
Olivia.
that. We believe that. In fact, I believe there is a line that mentions Borden wanted to be with Sarah.
Yeah, so we see him do this bird trick, and then obviously Fallon, or we don't know who it was, interjects and kills a bird. He creates a disruption in the theater, and that's the first side of that revenge. He says, I should have spotted him. And then later on, it's the reverse. Fallon creates this trick of shooting a bullet, and who comes up? A disgruntled Angier, and shoots him in the belly. It's a tale of one-upsmanship, and we just see this over and over throughout the film. And it's all centered from that original opening section where he ties a knot with Angier's wife.
Borden ties the knot on Julia, who is Angier's wife, or at least lover.
And that sort of sets up the revenge tale of this film, doesn't it? That's at the core of what happened. And he says, they have the funeral, and he says, how do you not know what knot you tied? And it's so in your face upon a rewatch that these guys are twins, but we don't know at the time. He says, how do you not know? This is why I say...
So wait, who tied the knot? So this is why the film's needlessly complicated. So we believe that Borden tied the knot, wanted to give Julia a challenge, I suppose. He didn't seem to do it in any sinister manner.
No.
And then Fallon is at the funeral. Fallon seems to be the more sincere of the two. Fallon appears to be the twin dressed up in full makeup, wearing the hat and hiding in the shadows in many of the scenes. So he's the more sincere and genuine of the two. But
you can tell
he survives, or does he end up in prison?
You can tell, Jackson, because when they're in the dinner scene, he's got Olivia and Sarah there. He's very flamboyant. He's very talkative. That's Borden, in my opinion. And Sarah's saying, what are you doing? You know, she's not happy with him. And it's because that's not her actual husband. And if you watch on a rewatch, you'll notice the different changes and where they change. It's actually more apparent on a second watch. And once again, that's why I say this is a perfect rewatch film. I remember saying to you a couple episodes ago, Bloodshot. would you watch this another 5 times? You remember that?
In a row, mind you. In a row.
In a row. 5 times in a row, would you watch this $1,000? Couldn't do it. This, count me in. The 1,000's mine. You'll pick up on something every time. Maybe not 5 times, but a couple of times.
Oh, look, you know what? If you're willing to do this 5 times, I'll go 6.
I've already done it 7.
I'll
Mind
go
you,
8.
it's a span of 14 years. But
I'll do 8 in 8 years.
when Sarah dies, right? This was a very confronting scene, and you said it didn't have as much emotional appeal to you. I can understand that from your point of view there. She eventually hangs herself because she asked him the question, "Do you love me?" And he says, "Not today." Very in your face once again. Obvious that it's not the right twin, but we don't know that. And she eventually kills himself. He's very committed to his craft, isn't he? Where he'll go so far as to not reveal this secret.
Yeah, both Borden and Fallon are committed. I
And
mean, Angier is so totally obsessed with topping Borden, but Borden and Fallon, it's bizarre just how far they go. And I guess to a point, this is how far Nolan is committed to his craft, his movie making, right?
Exactly, and they even go as far as to one of them has a broken finger, and you see in the reveal.
I think he loses.
Sorry,
2
he
fingers,
loses. Sorry, broken's an understatement. He loses 2 fingers, and then the brother goes as far as to do that as well. I mean, I wouldn't do that for a magic trick, would you?
How much am I being paid?
1,000 plus 5
Probably,
5 blood watchers. They go very far, and that's at a point of, is it become unrealistic? Well, in this world, no, because they're so obsessed with their craft that it's believable. But the wife eventually dies, and when you see her hanging, Jackson, did you have any emotional connection to that, or does it just feel a bit run of the mill?
It did feel very melodramatic and run of the mill. I don't believe it's at the fault of any of the acting, as Rebecca Hall does her best with a pretty underwritten role. Both her and Scarlett Johansson as the female romantic leads haven't got all that much to play with, sadly. I think some of this was undone just by how close attention we had to pay to every other sequence and every other narrative beat. Because, if you were to catch this movie on TV, step away, maybe cook dinner for 25, 30 minutes and return to it.
Don't do that.
You would have no clue where you are.
Can't.
That's okay, because we're sitting here, we're talking about rewatching this another 5 or 6 times, pick up on some of these beats and clues, but because it's all over the shop, it's really tough to let any of this settle, any of this sink in and breathe. Nolan likes to hit us with some big plot developments, but without giving each enough time and really exploring them, it doesn't add up to all that much. I think he would kind of cover similar material later in Inception, where it works much better.
I think Rebecca Hall did a really great job with her character. Very emotional performance. You think every time she was on screen, she was crying or disgruntled, sad. That sometimes can be hard as an actress when that's all you've got to work with, where you're not diving into the character that much. It's just
Rebecca Hall does a fine enough job. Nolan's not known for having the strongest female protagonists in any of his work, so hopefully he does have one in his films in the years to come.
Every great magic trick consists of 3 acts. The first act is called the pledge. The magician shows you something ordinary, but of course, it probably isn't.
So, one other thing that really hit home with me on a rewatch, one of the first scenes, this little boy performs a trick. Fallon performs a trick to this little boy with the bird.
Is it Fallon or Borden?
I'm just going to say it's Fallon, but we don't know. One of the brothers performs this trick, and I think it's Borden, but yeah. He performs this trick to the kid, and essentially it's where you'll have to sacrifice the bird to show the other one, and the kid says, "Where's the brother?" I think it's such a great scene. He says, "You killed him, where's the brother?" It's right in our face. This is the twist of the film, where obviously Angier will be killing his brother as well across. It's just, there's so many meanings you can take from that scene, is what I'm saying. Did you pick up on that or not?
It's a bit on the nose. Again, it doesn't really add up to much other than making us as audience members feel really, really intelligent, but it's not all that smart. It's not making us say it's not inspiring any real
But I
deep
think
conversation.
I think it's
I
very
feel that opinion.
it's very good writing because you can take so many different meanings from that scene. And you don't know that when you're first watching it. I think that makes for really good cinema.
I guess it just seems to drown us in a lot of ambiguity.
The second act is called The Turn.
He's obsessed with discovering your method.
The magician makes this ordinary something do something extraordinary. Now you're looking for the secret, but you won't find it.
So, not only did we get The Prestige released in 2006 about stage musicians, we also saw The Illusionist and Scoop. Now, The Illusionist, which is a romantic mystery starring Ed Norton, Paul Giamatti, and Jessica Biel, did go on to quite a bit of box office success as well as The Prestige. That one was directed and written by Neil Burger. And you recently saw a Neil Burger film, Limitless. What did you think of Limitless?
Limitless fell apart for me. It had a good opening. Bradley Cooper's always a great lead. Very good actor and also director. Directed Star Is Born. He's what carried me through the film. I think it went off the wheels maybe halfway through and then just lost me, and I just wasn't intrigued. I think I gave it a 6 out of 10 on my Instagram at Dan Allen Movies. If you don't follow it, Jackson.
Great plug.
Yeah, really seamless plug. It's not a Prestige, that's for sure.
As well, of course, as The Illusionist and The Prestige. We also
What
saw
was The
Scoop.
Illusionist? What was The Illusionist? I didn't watch The Illusionist.
It was look, I can't say I've seen it either, but it is another period piece about stage magicians. I do like Ed Norton, though.
And what was the other one? Scoop.
And Scoop, yeah. Scoop is a Woody Allen film. That was a crime caper. Wasn't quite as well received by critics and audiences alike as these two other films, but the leads in Scoop, Hugh Jackman and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, I watched that last year, believe it or not, because I wanted to go through Hugh's catalogue of films. So I went through.
You really love the man.
I love the man. Okay, that was one of the last ones I hadn't seen, and The Fountain, which that's an episode, mate.
You've you know what? I haven't seen The Fountain. You want to do that,
mate? I didn't enjoy it, and I'm in the minority because. That's another cult classic that everyone loves. Hugh's in that with
very polarizing
who
feature.
directed The
Rachel
Fountain?
Weisz.
Who directed The Fountain? Do you know?
Darren Aronofsky.
Of course,
Requiem with a Dream.
Yeah. Much like his other films, very ambiguous, very out there. But I watched Scoop. I watched Scoop, and it was run of the mill sort of stuff. It didn't light me on fire. With The Prestige, Jackson, how much money did it take in? Was it a box office success? Because it's not a film that if it came out today, if you didn't put the Nolan name on it, let's say, it's not a film that people would race out to see, is it?
No, Nolan definitely built up some goodwill with films like Memento, Insomnia, and Batman Begins prior. This one did manage to gross 110 million at the global box office on a reported budget of 40 million. So it certainly was a success, and anything that turns a profit is great.
Have you seen the budget for his new film Tenet?
Let me guess, 400, 500 million, 600 million. Talk me through it.
It's about 250. That's unheard of for an original movie.
Wow,
that is incredible. That is sort of the budget you get for a Marvel film. The amount of faith they have in this man now. I mean, Dunkirk. It's a war movie at its core. We've seen so many war movies before. This one was different. They played around with the timelines and things like that. You haven't seen it. I'd love to get your thoughts when you see it. But Dunkirk was a similar budget and ended up turning around 700, 800 million. It didn't have any right to do that. So the man has so many followers now that he could literally make a rom-com with 150 million budget and it could be a success.
Look, Nolan's not known for the best dialogue, so I think watching a Nolan rom-com could be certainly
not known for the best dialogue, Jackson. Watch what you're saying. Clunky. Watch what you're saying, mate. Now you're amping me up, all right? No.
All right, I think we're going to get into our own battle, our own lifelong feud.
Yeah, who's Angier and who's Fallon in this predicament?
I don't know. We might. I don't even.
Another theory.
I don't know.
Another theory, right, is so you've obviously got the twin brothers, which is the amazing climax of this film, which you said it wasn't amazing for you. I had chills down my spine first watching that. I thought it's the best twist of any film, or one of. And
Come on, mate. There's some M. Night Shyamalan pictures with better twists. Think of The Happening. What a movie.
The Happening, yeah, Mark Wahlberg. God, that was an incredible movie. I think I fell asleep 6 times. I've got a theory here with Angier, Hugh Jackman's character.
Yeah, please.
Where he eventually comes up with this plot, as you said, to frame him. And that's what we see at the start of the film where Michael Caine's
Frame who?
talking.
Borden.
Borden, yep. Or you're going to keep doing this, are you? We see him as his true persona as Lord Cordlow. We see him as Lord Cordlow. Is that his original persona? Is he faking? Is he becoming someone else in this magician? Because he says many times throughout the film, imagine playing someone else. Imagine having to pretend to be someone else. And then eventually he is someone else. He has to either pretend to be someone else or he was the whole time.
Where does his money come from?
That's the thing. This is what I'm saying. Where does the money come from? I'm betting that he was because the accent fully changes to.
Yeah. Look, can we talk about Hugh Jackman's accent in this for a minute? What is the guy going for?
I thought he was.
Is he
American? He was American.
Is he British?
He was American.
American.
He was American.
Not American.
He was American for most of the film, and then he switches to the proper British. And don't forget
to who?
And don't.
Cordlow is when it's clear it's Angier.
Don't forget that he also played the double as well. Let's not forget that. That was a brilliant performance. 5 minutes of that drunken. That was stellar stuff.
To be honest, that 5 minutes as the acting double, Root, I believe his name was. That was the best part of Hugh Jackman's performance in this for me.
Honestly, I thought.
I'll watch a movie with Root.
I thought Hugh Jackman's performance in this film was brilliant. I don't know what you're talking about. This established him. This established him as one of the best actors going around. He hadn't done that much at the time. He would go.
He did Kate and Leopold. You must have watched that. That's a true cinematic classic.
He would go on to do incredible work in Logan and Prisoners. But this will stand the test of time in his filmography as one of his better roles. He obviously played three characters in the film and did an astounding job. As I said, he could be Lord Cordlow.
Yeah, Cordlow.
He could be Lord Cordlow. What? Lord what? Cordlow. You're killing me.
You're going to be leaving some of these in because these are too funny to cut out.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do it phonetically here. So it's call the low.
Called low.
Called low. Called low. Say
called
it
low.
3 times
Called
fast.
low.
Called low. Called low.
Okay. Him as called. Is he?
8 hours later.
Okay. Hugh Jackman is his original.
Identity as Cordlow.
Is Hugh Jackman's original identity in this film Lord Cordlow, or is he Angier? We don't know, because where did all that money come from? As you said, with Tesla, he talks about having all this money and he's funding this operation. Yeah, that's another thing to think about. But anyway, another thing with that Tesla thing I want to touch on, the obsession. And the obsession of being the best magician, about getting that prestige right, that the audience loving your show, the obsession with that, and it's shown throughout the whole film. And even Tesla, his obsession as well is showcased, because the first thing I would do, well, maybe not what I would do, but some people would do, is if you could duplicate things, money would be the first thing that people would think of, or gold for this time. I'd be throwing gold blocks on there and seeing what happens. They don't do that, and that's because I think it's implied.
I think I'd be cloning Scarlett Johansson.
Jesus. I think they don't show that because obviously both men are obsessed with their craft and creating the best thing there is possible. That's just another thing I picked
What
up
is
on.
Tesla creating?
Well, he's alluded to as a wizard by Michael Caine's character Cutter later on in the film, that only wizards can come up with something like this. So
Yeah, and
I mean-
he's not coming up with magic. He's coming up with science.
mm,
Let's consider. It's briefly touched on. We've got Angier and Borden in a feud, but we also have Tesla and Edison in a feud.
yeah,
So
exactly.
Tesla's set up in Colorado Springs. He's set up in mountains, which may or may not actually be real. I can't say I know my geography of Colorado Springs off the back of my hand. And Tesla's laboratory, I suppose, is giving out free electricity to the entire town so that he can do some testing at night. That laboratory is later burnt down by some of Edison's men. So I guess we do touch on that this war of magic, and then this war of electricity and currents is very much mirrored. It's all fought between men, I suppose. They're all very prideful, very angry, and you say revenge. I think it's just total one-upsmanship.
But I love that part of the film, the one-upsmanship. That was one of the best parts of the whole thing, getting the different sides of revenge from each character, and eventually it trickles into their real life. Angier tells Olivia, go and work for Fallon. Go and work for him. Tell him the truth. Tell him all the secrets and try to figure out his secret. He's so obsessed with knowing this secret, and we don't know what this secret is at the time as an audience member upon first watching, and she eventually betrays him as well because he's just so obsessed.
Does she, though? It was a little underwritten. It wasn't explored all that well. Is she a double agent? Is she a triple agent?
Well, she ends up becoming in love with Fallon or Borden. I think it was Borden.
Is that all a part of the act? I don't know. Look, it
Well,
wasn't
what was-
the best Scarlett Johansson performance, but it just, for me, it was a bit unclear. Was she actually in love with Borden, or was this just all a part of whatever that Angie had put together?
I believe she was eventually in love with him and grew to hate him because of his obsession. And even then, Fallon Borden questions her loyalty, even when she says she reveals the first truth, the second truth, and then the final truth that she hates him now. And even then, he still questions it. But eventually, they become in love and this and that because he was probably talking to Fallon. It's very confusing, and
It is.
I'd love to.
It's very muddled because are we watching this grand love story unfold, or is it a battle between two men? Is it both? Is it everything we're talking about?
Do you know what
It needs to pick one. We need a key to unlock this. There's got to be something, and we can't be watching it time and time again looking for it because I don't think it's there.
Well,
I think that's the whole point.
That's the beauty.
whole point is that there is no key.
But that's the beauty of it all, Jackson. Trying to uncover it all, and that's the same with Inception and a couple of other Nolan films where that's the fun in his films, is trying to uncover all the pieces. I would have loved to have a director's commentary with him outlining who's who. You know, is this Fallon here? Is this Borden?
It's funny you mention that because that doesn't actually exist for this reason.
I know, it's funny. And it's the same with a lot of his films. It's left up to interpretation, and a lot of films like that end up being cult classics because it's a battle of, like you and me, discussing how it works. And that the fact that we're discussing this right now, Jackson, and having a battle of wits between us, that just to me shows that this is a great film. This is a masterpiece, because are we having the same discussion for Scoop? Bloodshot?
Oh, definitely not Bloodshot again.
Another underwritten sort of thing about this film is the cinematography and the score. Now, a lot of
Underwritten, underdeveloped, underdone? What do you reckon?
No, not underwritten, but underappreciated, I should say. The score had subtle tones about it, sort of really elevated the emotional scenes for me, and it was very, not haunting, it had a mystique about it, the score. And it was something I noticed just upon this watching yesterday. It really elevated some scenes, especially when Tesla's showcasing that machine. When the revenge sort of beats hit, there's always that score, that sort of deep score coming in. It really elevates it. And when there was the certain moments I had chills, it was because of that score as well. Played a part in it.
I didn't think the score was all that great. Sorry. It was okay. It reminded me very much of some of Nolan's later work with Hans Zimmer in films like Inception and the Dark Knight Rises, as well as Interstellar. And
Look, it wasn't
I
an
just
epic.
I just kind of yearn for those. It's tough because we are watching this through 2020 goggles and not in 2006. So
Yeah.
flashing back to them, but hey, that's all a part of being a contemporary audience member.
It's very hard to go up against Hans Zimmer, my favorite composer of all time. The epic stuff that guy can create is incredible. But this had its own tone. I think you just watched Interstellar, which is another one we're going to go into later on. After watching that and going to this, talking about music is very difficult because that is honestly one of the best soundtracks of all time. So I can understand where you're coming from, but watch it again. Seriously, Jackson, watch this again, and you'll notice some of the music creeps in, and it does create an atmosphere. It does create an atmosphere.
It's an interesting point you mentioned about the cinematography. This was some work with Wally Pfister, and Wally Pfister did many of Nolan's earlier films. In fact, I believe he did every flick as cinematographer up until, including Inception, which was his last bit of work with Nolan, and it was nominated for an Academy Award at the next ceremony for Best Cinematography. What happened to Wally Pfister? His name seemed to be everywhere, and he was this massive Hollywood darling. What happened to him?
What was his last? Is he still working to this day?
I don't believe he's been serving on too many films to this day. I know he's appeared, his work has shown up in some TV shows. Wally Pfister lost all his goodwill with 2014's Transcendence. Do you remember Transcendence?
And guess who produced that?
Who produced that?
Chris Nolan. That is.
And how much money did Transcendence lose?
I don't know what happened there, but that was a shocker, and that was the only movie Nolan's attached. Oh, I guess he was attached to Batman as well versus Superman.
Nolan produces on many of these films, so it's really his vision. But Transcendence, which starred Johnny Depp, I haven't seen it, but looking at some of the statistics here,
really bad.
I don't know what happened budget there. And barely made $100 million at the global box office. It's no surprise why Wally Pfister has turned his back on the industry for a little while. I believe it was very much a dream project for him. We should take a look at that movie sometime.
Was that the last movie he did?
To the best of my knowledge, that's the last movie he worked on. That was 6 years ago.
It's not like he created the story and, that should...
Maybe he did.
That should destroy his career. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe it was enough for him to walk away.
Yeah,
Johnny Depp has been a tough one to work with.
True. I've seen that film. Not good. We can go into it maybe one day, but that's interesting that he's not around. I think now, I believe Nolan's working with a really incredible cinematographer who did Interstellar. He did.
Oh, yeah. Some Danish person, yeah.
Yeah. Hoyt van Hoytema. I don't know if I'm butchering his name, but he
I bet you nailed that one.
Yeah. He also did Brad Pitt's Ad Astra. Very cinematic approach. He did Dunkirk, I believe, as well. So he's really, really honed in on his craft, and he's phenomenal. So I can't wait to see what he comes up with in the future. So as much as Wally did a great job in all the films that he did with Nolan, Dark Knight, he's an astounding cinematographer as well for what he did. I wouldn't say he's upgraded, but he's got someone who can match the bill as well. So he's worked with such good talent, Nolan. I mean,
you bang on, mate. It's a team effort. Nolan loves pointing this out in some of his works, and his movies really are about making movies. Think to something like Inception, where all our lead characters spell out the word dreams, and everyone seems to take on a different role in the movie making process. And here, Michael Caine's character Cutter, he comes across as a producer. It's very apparent that he's in all these magic shows. He's behind the scenes and he's behind the curtain. He's making sure that things are going ahead. He's often working to get contacts to get into this venue or that venue. And finally, Angier, Hugh Jackman's character, tells Cutter that, no, I don't want you behind the scenes. I don't want you to know what's going to go on with my real transported man act. So interesting stuff. Dan, let's take the initials of our leading characters. Here's what we've got. Alfred Borden, Robert Angier. These initials, what do they spell?
Abracadabra.
Abracadabra.
Wow, that's cool.
Very on the nose stuff. from Chris
It's not
Nolan.
on the nose though. It's
It
a
is on the
quirky
nose.
little
Come
thing
on.
that no one would pick up on. I didn't even know that until you just told me.
What have you been watching 7 or 8 times? Come on.
Seriously, it's astounding. There's so much thought into this screenplay, Jackson. I don't understand why you think it wasn't that good. I have to convince you here.
We're missing that key. We're missing that key.
Well, the key to his secret was Tesla. Now, another theory to bounce off you here that I've seen floating around is that they allude to the fact that Tesla has made a machine like this before. Okay? Is it a possibility, Jackson? I'm throwing this out here. That Fallon went to Tesla earlier on. Tesla created this device and Borden comes out. No, seriously. Am I stretching?
You know what? I reckon you're right.
Really? Oh, am I stretching?
I don't think you're stretching. We have a line that pops up, mentions that Fallon seems to have a mysterious backstory in Borden's act. And could these men be separated? Could these men have been born together? Well, I think someone would know that they're twins. So you know what? I reckon Borden's gone to Tesla. He's got the machine made. Pops out Fallon. The machine's gone. That's it.
Yeah.
You think Tesla or maybe Ali, Andy Serkis's character, would tell Angier at some point, but I guess it's all a part of the magic.
Well, look, the key word as well to his novel was Tesla as well, so I thought that was quirky. But again, you could look at this a different way, where he was just saying that because he knew the whole point of the novel was he was leading him to Tesla for the reason of he was leading him to Tesla. He was leading him on a wild goose chase that ended in nothing. That was the point as well. So I don't know where that stands, but again,
another misdirection, right?
Another misdirection, but another mysterious element to the film, Jackson, that we're talking about here, and we don't know the final conclusive answer, and that's a good thing. That's all I'm saying is that I understand that you think it makes the audience feel like they're smart, makes everyone feel like they're smart for working these details out, but I enjoy working this sort of stuff out, and that makes for an interesting film and an interesting rewatch. So I don't know. Maybe that's where we differ.
I'm sure we all feel smart putting together a 10-piece jigsaw puzzle. You know what? I've been reflecting on some of the earlier scenes we had in this film as I look at my notes, and let's talk about Chung Ling Soo. Do you remember that scene with the Chinese magician?
Walk me through it.
So Chung Ling Soo is a magician who appears to be very old and very frail. Yet here he is on stage and he's making different items disappear. And Cutter sends Angier and Borden as his assistants off to watch Chung Ling Soo make a goldfish in a bowl disappear. And the bowl is full of water. How he does this, good Lord only knows, being this old frail man. He throws this big costume he's got up over the bowl. The bowl's appears to be taken off the table. We don't know, put back up. Now, after this goes on, Borden has this great point to Angier where he says there is no magic to it. The trick is that he's committed to this performance in public. You're right. It is a nod to what goes on with Borden and Fallon committing to this performance in public, as well as Angier becoming Lord Caldlow in the prestige of the climax of the film.
Well, they're both doing it, or it could be interpreters. They're both already doing that.
Everyone seems to be acting as someone else. It's very... All right, look, you're right. It is pretty dense. But Chung Ling Soo was actually a real person. Now, Chung Ling Soo was a real American magician whose birth name was William Ellsworth Robinson, again, better known by his stage name Chung Ling Soo. And he had his own feud with a similar Chinese magician known as Ching Ling Fu. The reason I mention this is that Chung Ling Soo, in real life, never broke character. When he was seen in public, he was dressed up in his full Chinese regalia. He never spoke English on stage, and he'd communicate to journalists through an English interpreter. Who knows if he was really speaking Cantonese or Mandarin, but it was all a part of the act. Chung Ling Soo died on stage. He was shot during a bullet catching trick that went awry.
Wow.
And how does Borden lose his fingers, Dan?
Yeah.
The same trick. Is that the key? Is the key to this film that it is just all about committing to the performance,
Correct.
committing to the stage, and
That
committing to maintaining that sense of suspending an audience member's disbelief?
It's the devotion.
I guess that's the trick.
It's the devotion to the act where you'll go to no ends to fool the audience, to fool them because the audience.
And what is
wants
the
to be
cost?
fooled.
What is the cost?
Well, your livelihood, your life, your relationships, and at the end, you'll be at the brim of your trick because both our leads end up dying in a way, don't they?
Look, I'm not going to say you won me over, but
I'm close. Why don't we just thank quickly our sponsor, Displate, for sponsoring today's episode, Jackson. Displate are thick metal plates with gallery quality prints on them, guys. You can get so many movie ones for your room or office. Pulp Fiction, I saw, Back to the Future, Marty McFly. There's so many classics you can get. You can get them now with our code OFF21. You can get 21% off. And they're just so easy to set up. They look great anywhere. It's a no-brainer, guys. If you love movies, you want to get a few posters up there, this is the perfect thing. It's better than a picture frame, in my opinion. It's just so easy to set up. It's no tapes or nails, nothing. It'll take you 5 minutes to set it up. So get a couple. Use our code OFF21. Jackson, you got a few you're going to get as well. Tell me.
Yeah, on the way right now. I've got both some cinematic masterpieces from Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale's back catalogue. So from Christian Bale, I've got Terminator Salvation on the way.
I knew you were going to bring that up at some point.
And we can't forget Hugh Jackman's amazing work in movie 43.
Oh, Jesus. That is a stinker. Movie.
Do you remember the balls? Do you remember the balls on his chin?
Oh, honestly, that was probably the best scene, him. And after that, it was shocking. I didn't mind that scene. Believe it or not.
We had Kate Winslet and Hugh Jackman sharing the screen, and we somehow screwed it all up.
I don't know what the story was with that. We need to do one on that as well. Anyway, Display,
next
guys.
episode, movie 43.
Display off 21. Jackson.
Off 21.
Jackson, before we wrap up here, what was your favourite scene of the film?
Oh, favourite sequence. You know what? Let's go all the way right back to the start. That kicks off this whole plot in motion. Angier in the tank drowning with Borden watching it over. We see that as one of the first shots in the entire film, and it wraps things up quite neatly as well. So let's just go with that.
That was very disturbing, seeing him begging for his life, and it was all
drowning. Drowning definitely wasn't coming home. It was all about the agony.
No, and it's the same fate that his wife ended up taking because of Borden, and that's how he framed him. It's all these things tie together, Jackson. This is why it's so well written. This is why
it was a nice ribbon. It was a nice ribbon.
For me, my favorite scene, Jackson, I want to say it was the reveal, but I don't want to be generic here. So I'm going to go with the scene, as I mentioned earlier, with the boy, because there's so many meanings to it. It says, see, he's fine. It's in reference to the bird trick, and the boy goes, but where's his brother? I thought it was just so powerful upon a rewatch as well, because there's so many meanings to it. One meaning is, where's the brother, as in Borden's got a brother, obviously the twins. One of them doesn't get to see that prestige, doesn't get the limelight. Again, Angier, it's pretty much revealing that trick where his duplicate is going to be either the prestige or in the tank to his death. There's just so many meanings to that scene. I thought it was fantastic, and it's, we see the bird being wiped off into the bin later on. It just had a lot of gravitas to that scene. I just loved it. So I'm going to go with that. Jackson, what's our final ratings for this film? I'm interested to see your final number out of 10, because I think you know where I'm going with this. So tell me your final conclusion on this film.
7 out of 10. Top hats and black cats.
7. Oh, Jackson, you're killing me here. That is the lowest rating I've seen in a while from someone.
A good magician never reveals his secrets.
Hey, you just said you didn't like that aspect, that Nolan didn't reveal his secrets. He's a good magician, obviously, then.
A 7's not a 0. Come on, mate.
Jackson, this is our first 10 out of 10 from me.
Whoa!
10 out of 10 for The Prestige. A masterpiece. As I said from the top, it had everything. Brilliant acting, cinematography to match, music, production design, two leads battling it out, one-upsmanship. The movie is a magic trick, and it's one that I'll never forget. 10 out of 10. 7 out of 10 from Jackson. So what does that equal now? What are we going to put that for Letterboxd? An 8 or a 9? Where are we going to settle for that? We haven't had this predicament. A 7 and a 10 equals 8.5. So one of us...
It's actually 17 out of 20. We round it down so it becomes an 8.
Becomes an 8.
Yep.
All right.
Cop that.
I'll cop it for now. I'll cop it for now.
You'll probably go in and change your dog.
So it's a 10 out of 10 from me and a 7 out of 10 from Jackson. We're going to round that off to an 8 out of 10 together for Letterboxd.
That's why there's a third act called The Prestige. This is the part with the twists and turns, where lives hang in the balance.
Julie, come on!
And you see something shocking you've never seen before.
Jackson, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about The Prestige. Different opinions, you and me. It's been a lot of fun. But before we head off for today's episode, let's just quickly touch on what we watched this week. For me, I'll start us off the bat, Jackson. I watched a film from Disney's offering lately. It came out in cinemas only for a short amount of time, and then obviously COVID affected it. It was Onward, starring Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. And it was good. It was good, but it didn't stand up against some of the other Pixar Disney films. You're talking Toy Story, Wall-E, Frozen, I guess for some. It didn't stand up against those films. It was still it had some touching moments. It was a good story about these brothers and that weren't that close, but then eventually became closer through trying to find their dad. It was a nice movie, but it didn't reach those heights that I was hoping it for. So I'd probably give it maybe a 7 out of 10. But so that's what I watched. So check it out, guys. It's a good flick for the family, I guess. For if you've got kids, it might be a good one for them as well. It's always got Disney films always have these underlying messages, and this one has a nice one about appreciating your siblings and your family and things like that. So it's got nice messaging as usual, and it's a good one for the kids. So probably a 7 out of 10. Jackson, what did you end up watching this week? Another old-time classic?
Well, so you watched a recent kids movie. On the other side of the fence, I watched Nightcrawler.
Oh, nice. Jake Gyllenhaal. One of my favorites. Yeah, one of my favorites.
2014, 2015?
Yeah, one of those. I think 2014. Really, Jake Gyllenhaal's another actor you got to watch. Phenomenal in a lot of his performances. What do you think of Nightcrawler?
Yeah, powerhouse stuff from Jake Gyllenhaal. Very chilling, disturbing flick.
Oh, yeah.
I must say, very effective. I loved it. I'm keen to go back and watch that one again. Some awesome shots there of the LA city and real dark and gringy. I love some of the supporting cast. It was great to see Rene Russo in a leading role, and Bill Paxton even shows up a little bit, but this really is Jake Gyllenhaal's movie, and I can absolutely understand why he got so much acclaim when this released. He portrays this narcissistic manipulator.
Doesn't he?
The moment he's on screen, he's just got such this coldness and this distance to him, where you've got no idea what his backstory is, and it's frightening. We really don't know what lengths he would have gone to throughout that film his character would have gone to, I should say, to get what he wanted, and it's shocking stuff. I love a movie that's challenging and confronting, and it even has some ultra violence. I'll go back and I'll watch it again. For me, that was 8 out of 10 Stolen Beach Bikes.
That was an 8 out of 10 from me too. Really gripping stuff. Loved it. Beautiful, Jackson. We recommend both those films, I guess. Nightcrawler and Onward if you're looking for something to watch while you're indoors. And of course, The Prestige. Rewatch that. If I haven't said it already, better on a rewatch.
Would you do it 5 times right now?
For $1,000, maybe.
For free?
I'd It'd take
Nothing's free.
It'd take some convincing, Jackson. Time is money. Anyway, guys, we really appreciate you guys tuning into this episode. This was a long one, Jackson. We're well over an hour, but it's been a lot of fun. You can find us on all social media platforms, Instagram, Letterboxd, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. We watch this podcast, movie podcast. Check us out. Follow us if you haven't. And, of course, follow me, Dan Allen Movies, on Instagram, Letterboxd. Jackson is Marshall on Film _ on everywhere. And, leave us a rating. Give us some feedback.
We'd love to hear what you recommend that we review next. We often have our own little game of one-upsmanship throughout the week on what are we gonna cover. And despite having a schedule lined up for the next month, we're constantly throwing movies out the window. If you've got something you want to hear or you want to start some discussion, then hit us up, particularly on our Instagram.
Yeah, we had a lot of people ask us about Platform, which was one that we did recently. And if you haven't seen that, it was our last podcast. And we did a poll of what Oscar-nominated films you guys wanted to see. And
what one?
It was Parasite up against 1917 in the end, and we obviously went with Parasite. It was a massive film last year, one of my favourites. I've watched it 4 times, so I can't wait to dive into that next. Jackson, are you looking forward to it?
Bring on Parasite.
It's going to be a big one, I think, as well. We're in for a couple of long ones here, but it's always fun. So, guys, again, leave us a rating, leave us any feedback, and we thank you for tuning in. We'll see you later. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening.